Welcome to Maths for All. I'm Ashley Flynn. This is Algebra 2.6, the quadratic formula. Solving quadratic equations. So factorizing is the fastest way to solving quadratic equations if you can find whole number factors and if you can find them quickly. So definitely factorizing would be the first choice. However, in other cases we have the quadratic formula, or what we often call the minus b formula. This is what it looks like. You should use the quadratic formula when you can't find factors easily or quickly, or if the question asks you to give your answer correct to 2 decimal places or 3 decimal places, etc. Or if the question asks you to give your answer in surd form, or perhaps in the form of a root b or something similar. So these are clues that you shouldn't bother trying to factorize. You should go straight to the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is available in the formula and tables books on the algebra pages, so we don't have to memorize it. So how do we use the quadratic formula? Here it is. So what are a, b and c? A quadratic equation has the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So a is the number beside the x squared term, the quadratic term. If you don't see one, so if you don't see a number, it's just x squared, then a equals 1. B is the number beside the x term. If you don't see a number, if it's just x, well then b equals 1. And c is the number part, or the constant. If you don't see one, if there is none there, then c equals 0. Okay, now these numbers beside the variables, so the number beside the x squared or the x, are known as coefficients. So let's try it. Solve the equation 2x squared plus 18x plus 28 equals 0. In this case, a is 2, b is 18, and c is 28. And we're going to use the formula to help us solve it. Okay, so I would always tend to write it down for the examiner and for myself so I can follow it. And the next stage is to substitute, so to enter the numbers instead of the letters. So we have minus b, so minus 18, plus or minus. Now plus or minus, we'll deal with that in a moment. It will give us 2 values for x, and we expect to get 2 values for x from a quadratic formula. Okay, equals, so under the square root sign, we have 18 squared, subtract 4 times 2 times 28. Okay, I tend to use brackets there, not strictly necessary, especially in this case when all the numbers are positive, but sometimes it can help when we have negatives. And under the line, so all of the top line is to be divided by 2 times a, so 2 times 2. Okay, so this is what we had previously, and let's do some workings out. So let's do under the square root there. 18 squared is 324, and the multiplication gives us 224. Okay, nothing, and under the line, 2 times 2 is 4. So that's it for at this stage. If we continue to work under the square root, we get the subtraction gives us 100. And we know that the square root of 100 is 10. Okay, and this is what we're at here. So how do we continue? All right, so this is where we use that plus or minus. So we separate the work into 2 lots, one where we use the plus So minus 18 plus 10 over 4, and one situation where we use the minus. Minus 18 minus 10 over 4. The first one on the left gives you minus 8 over 4. One on the right gives you minus 28 over 4. And when you divide by 4, you get minus 2 or minus 7. So there are two answers for x as we would expect from a quadratic equation. Okay, quite likely we could have got that from factorizing, but this is just to demonstrate the formula. Okay, so now I want to show you how you can do that all at once
using your
on
CASIO
your
calculator.
scientific calculator.
So firstly,
okay, rather than
I'm
going
going to
through
use the
step by
fraction
step.
button here to create two levels on the screen. And then I'm just going to type it literally as I see the formula. If it's not a subtract sign, I tend to use this for negative. Negative 18. Now the plus or the minus, we don't have that on the calculator. So what we do is, the first time around I'm going to use plus. Okay, then I'm going to square root it. This is the square root button. Then I have 18, and to square something I can use x squared. Okay, now if you wanted to, if you have a negative number, you could use brackets and put the negative sign inside the brackets before you square it as well. Okay, subtract. Okay, now sometimes we have a negative number involved in the subtraction, so you can just type them all in here. Brackets are not necessary really, but sometimes it helps me to visualize. So 4 times 2 times 28. Then we use our cursor to go below the line, and we've got 2 times 2. Okay, press your equals, and I get my answer straight away. If you're working with surds and decimals, you can use this button here to change between surds and decimals if you wish. Okay, now that gives one answer, and let's use our cursor to scroll back through the equation so to get our second one. So just before the plus, I press delete, and I'll replace it with the minus and press equals, and that gives me my second answer, minus 7.
So here we have another example. This time it says give your answers correct to 2 decimal places. So immediately that's a clue. You go straight to the quadratic formula, don't bother with factorizing. A little list of A, B and C, and in this case you'll notice that B and C are both negative. Okay, so what does that mean? If you look on the left hand side, minus B. Okay, when you put in your value for minus B, you would have minus 7. So as a result, that becomes plus 7. So we're leading with a plus 7. Under the square root sign there, I've used brackets. We're going to be squaring minus 7. We're then subtracting 4 times 2 times minus 3. Okay, all divided by 2 times 2. Okay, so there you see under the square root that minus 7 squared is plus 49, and anything squared will be positive. And from the multiplication there you see in a moment, we're going to be taking a negative minus 24. So on the next line there, it becomes plus 24. Okay, just going down through the page then, under the square root we have the square root of 73. And I used the calculator to evaluate that, and I've gone 1 digit extra than was required by the question, and I'll round at the very end. Okay, then you split your problem into 2 scenarios, one where you use the plus on the left, one where you use the minus on the right. We get 2 values of x, and at the end I've rounded to the 2 decimal places as required by the question. Okay. Now, here's another example. And this time it says, give your answers in the form a plus or minus b root 2. So again, straight away, you know you should go to the quadratic formula. Okay, quick list of a, b, and c. Again, we have some negative numbers. My formula, putting in the numbers, you see minus 6 at the beginning gives you the plus 6 on the left, and then inserting all the values there. You can pause if you wish. Okay, so we'll be taking a negative under the square root sign. And this is what we have. And under the square root this time we have 128. Okay, now as you recall, the question wanted us to answer in the form of a plus or minus b root 2. So root 2 is in my mind, okay? I think I can work with the number under the line. So yes, I've written it as a multiple of 2. 128 is 64 multiplied by 2. Okay, so how do I work with this? Well, I do know a whole number answer for the square root of 64. Okay, square root of 64 is 8. Okay, so this is what we were asked to give it as. Okay, so what you can do is you can put the answer for the root 64 part in front, and you get 8 root 2. Okay, we don't have a whole number answer for root 2, so that remains. All right. And now we can divide both terms on the top line by 2. So we get 3 plus or minus 4 root 2 as required by the question. Okay, one version with the plus and one version with the minus, giving us 2 values of x. Now, you should give these a go in Algebra 2.6, the quiz, and your written exercises. Okay, there's a couple of terms in the glossary.